Hey, Connect Your Dots family. This is Brandon. Hey, welcome to another episode. I think we're up to, what are we at? 16 now. Episode 16. And hey, I've got a guest today that you're going to love. His name is Neil Wattier, and he is a resilient coach. He's got an amazing history. He's been in the military. And now he really is a resilience consultant, as he calls it. But it's really working with people on mindset and moving forward. I love one of the things he said that really stood out is he said, hey, the difference between me and like a therapist, and there's a lot of people that need therapy, and that's awesome. But the difference with me and a therapist is I'm going to say, now what? Like, it's okay to look back. It's okay to go through things. But really where the change happens, where growth happens, where you change your life is when you start answering the question, now what? Now what are you going to do? This is a great episode, everybody. Thank you so much for joining. And I will see you on the back end of this episode with a little bit of a recap. Here I am with Neil. Enjoy. All right, everybody at Connect the Dots. This is Brandon, your host. I am so excited to be with you today. And I have a new friend of mine with an amazing, interesting background and a focus, and you guys are going to love him. So I have with me today, Neil Wattier, and I just asked you how to pronounce it, and I think I just butchered it. How do I pronounce your name properly?
The last name is Wattier, but ironically,
Wattier.
It is French, and I don't mind a little bit of the accent on the end because I recently found out it is French. So
yeah, and I think when you told me it was French, that's why I started thinking, Wattier, or maybe that was Italian. I don't know. But anyways, Neil is a resilience trainer and a performance consultant. He has a background in the U.S. military, and we had a conversation a few days ago, and I was just fascinated with the techniques, the strategies, the way that he's helping people. And Neil, welcome to Connect Your Dots.
Thanks a lot. I appreciate being on here, man. We had a great conversation the other day, and I'm really looking forward to this recording, this podcast, and sharing with people the information that I have.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for being here. Now, tell us all, like what exactly is a resilience trainer or a performance consultant? Those are kind of new terms for a lot of people.
So resilient is becoming a very popular word in society and in different performance domains. So when we talk about performance domains, a lot of times people think about sports psychology, right? Performance, sports, business, high-risk professions like firefighters and surgeons, performing artists, right? We typically think of those people as they have a something that they do regularly that requires skills, and there's consequences for their actions, whether it be a firefighter, somebody dies, or a performing artist doesn't perform really well. I typically take performance skills, and I try to apply those in different areas that people might not have think about. So, a lot of people think about resilience. One of the common things that I hear when I ask people, what do you think of resilience? They think we'll bounce back. And I'm actually not a fan of that, because my idea of resilience is skills that help you grow and thrive through stress and adversity. And I don't want you to be the person that you were before you went through the adversity or before you experienced the stress. I want you to constantly grow and thrive. And in order to do that, you have to practice skills. And so my approach to resilience training and performance consulting is I teach you skills that help you go from good to great.
Got it. So how do you, I think that's fantastic. So we're being proactive instead of reactive. And I do agree. I think whenever I hear the term resilience, I'm thinking about somebody that's gone through hell and back and trying to help them get back to normal, if you will. But what you're saying is this is about helping people not ever go through the hell situation because they have the skills to be resilient, to not let themselves kind of mentally go into those depths. Is that what I'm hearing?
My idea is to help you so that if you do ever have to go through something like that, that you are going to be a much stronger person. I mean, let's take a physical analogy. You go to a gym and you exercise, or you go out onto the street and you walk or you run. The goal is to consistently get better, stronger, faster, be able to run further. So the idea that, 2 weeks from now, I can go out and run something easily that today I might be out of gas and I might be breathing real hard. That's the analogy I like to use for things like, mental skills that, let's take this example. If you ever look up the word survivor in the dictionary, a lot of people like to talk about, oh, I survived, I'm a survivor. And they say it with pride. The definition of survive is to continue to exist. Now, that's not the kind of mentality that I want you to take. That's not the kind of lifestyle that I want you to live. I don't want you to just continue to exist and make it through things. I want you to be able to either look at what you went through and learn from it and grow from that, or I want you to apply skills as you're going through it so that you are better, you are more resilient, you're able to keep your connections, keep your cool head, have emotional control, and have the perspective that you need and the mindset that you need. So as you're going through things, whether it's something that just happened to you, like, some type of adversity or tragedy, or something that you're willingly putting yourself through, like school. I'm 46 years old and I'm going through my master's degree. I'm willingly doing that, but it doesn't mean that it's not difficult, right? I still have to have the mental skills and the mentality that graduate school is tough. Right. So I want to be able to come out the other side, not just with a degree, but I want to be better on the other side.
Yeah. So one of the things that we talk about on Connect Your Dots quite a bit is living a fully charged, energetic life. And it sounds to me like you and I are pretty aligned. You talk about being resilient and not having the definition of survived as I continue to exist. But I kind of heard in there that you're talking about a thriving life, a growing life, something that you're proud to move forward in, not just holding on.
Yeah, there's two little sayings that I typically go with. Number one is, what doesn't kill you might make you weak, right? We've heard that saying, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And that is, number one, that's absolutely false. Because what doesn't kill you might not make you stronger. And we kind of talked about that already, right? Like the whole survivor mentality. I want to come at this as, what doesn't kill you might make you weak, because I want to prepare you. We have a saying in the military that you don't rise to the occasion, you fall to your level of training. And that's true for everyone, because when you face adversity, when you have difficult days, when you have significant stress, our brain will play tricks on us, right? And it will want to shut down certain areas, and it has these survival mechanisms built into it. And those survival mechanisms are based on habits. And we a lot of times don't even realize that we're doing it. But think about this. You've got a brain that pulls in data, just immense amount of data from all your five senses, your sight, your feeling, all the five senses. Your brain can't process, store, and recall all that information. So in order to make sense of what's happening, your brain creates shortcuts. And it starts with the basic stuff, the survival stuff, right? And sometimes the survival stuff is there to protect us, but the survival stuff that is there to protect us also can make us a little jumpy, right? When we talk about the emotional response or anger or some type of thing that's going on, that you develop these habits because your brain needs to create shortcuts, because it can only focus on the most important things at the time. Right? You get up in the morning and you tie your shoes. I shouldn't have to think about tying my shoes after doing it, I don't know how many thousands of times, right? But do you know how many muscles it takes to tie your shoes? 61. That's a complex task that we've created a shortcut in our mind. But if I'm not careful, really, really important things become shortcuts. If I come home from work and I yell at my spouse, okay, one time I had a bad day, but my brain takes note of that. And if I come home repeatedly after bad days and yell at my spouse, my brain is now taking notes saying that when you come home, it's okay to yell at your spouse, because that's what you consistently do. You get better at what you practice. You get better at what you do, because your brain takes notes and it creates shortcuts. You ever been driving And like, you're like, some people get that highway blank out, right? And you just
Oh,
end
yeah.
up somewhere. And sometimes, and I've done this before, like I've changed jobs before, and sometimes ended up at my old job because I wasn't even thinking about it, right?
Yeah.
I was supposed to go left to my new job. I went right, and I was like, wait, I'm going the wrong place, because
Yeah.
your brain is thinking about something, and you've got this habit in the background, right? So what doesn't kill you might make you weak. The other thing is, and I like to be clear with this, because when you get into things like psychology, it's very there are some areas that I should not get into. I'm a performance consultant. I am not a psychologist, right? There's a significant distinction for those that are therapists, those people that are counselors, those are psychologists. That takes a lot of training, a lot of education, and specialization. So I'd like to be clear that I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a counselor, I'm not a therapist. I'm a performance consultant. I'm not better than them. I have gone through mental health training or mental health counseling, excuse me. I've been through therapy. I've sat on the couch. I've talked to people. I've had difficult times in my 26 years in the military. And I am a huge advocate for mental health care, but that's not what I do. So ultimately, you and I, if we have a conversation or we have a training session, you can tell me whatever you want. Ultimately, I'm going to ask you a question, and it's going to come down to, okay, that happened. Now what? What are you going to do about it? Because I'm not going to get into all the therapy stuff. That's somebody else's responsibility. And if you need it, I'm going to support it. And I'm going to tell you, go talk to somebody, because everybody needs healing. Everybody needs direction. Everybody needs to overcome, right? But when you and I talk, I'm going to ask you ultimately, okay, that happened. What are we going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? What can I help you do to overcome and get to where you want to go? So those two things of, what doesn't kill you might make you weak. And then the question of that happened, now what? That's typically the definition of my approach. Leading with skills. And that's what you and I ultimately really want to talk about here, is because people say all the time, you hear things like perspective and mindset and optimism and these kind of things. And people are like, okay, great. I need to go have a good mindset. The question is how. Right. How do we do these things? So that's what I think really got our conversation going. And you and I, we almost went over time, and it was a great conversation. But we got really excited because we're talking about skills, right? How do I do those things?
Yeah. And, I'm going to, you said a lot there, and I really appreciate that. I want to unpack some of this for people as they're listening to this. You talked about the neuroplasticity, right? The shortcuts that our brain creates. And I know my story, my personal journey and story is I survived childhood, is what I say. I learned skills in my childhood of how to survive. I learned how to navigate abuse. I learned how to protect myself. The problem I had was the skills that I learned, and I'm going to do air quote, skills that I learned were not good skills for me later in life. So as an adult, as a business owner, as a husband, as a father, when difficulty came at me, and it came at me in the form of the recession hit us financially. I was I sold a business that was very overwhelming. I had a partner that embezzled money. That was overwhelming. And when all this stress just became so much, what you say is you don't rise to the occasion. You go down to your skill level.
Fall to your level of training.
Fall to your level of training. Thank you for saying that. Much more elaborate than I paraphrased there. I sucked. Right? I sucked because I had not developed the skills necessary to handle the level of pressure that I was experiencing, because I was using childhood skills, again, air quote, skills that served me. I don't know if I'm going to say well or not, but they served me. They helped me survive. But when I was in a position where I wanted to thrive, using survival skills is not going to do it. That's what I heard. I would just want to make sure and clarify for everyone else listening. Is that what you're telling us?
That's right. And the idea of survival skills, Sometimes I tell people, sometimes the answer is, I just need to get through to Friday. I just need to get it to weekend until I can relax. That's a good fallback, but it can't be. If you find yourself every Wednesday saying, I just need to get through the weekend, we got to have a different conversation. But every once in a while you're having a bad week or you just didn't get sleep. Sometimes the answer is, I just need to make it through the next 2 days, and then let's talk about this thing, right? That's kind of that's a simple mechanism, and there's simple tools and techniques, and there's really, really elaborate, time consuming. No one skill is the answer. No one, right? Because even the simple ones, okay, great. So you do this over and over again. Now that becomes habit. Okay, great. Now what, right? It's like,
Right.
I don't play basketball, but it's the first thing that came to my mind. I mean, when I say playing basketball, what's the first thing that comes to mind?
Well, for me, because yesterday was the anniversary of Kobe Bryant's death, which I thought was really sad. I immediately think of Kobe, but I will say the second thing for me would be free throws.
Okay.
But I'm not
Right.
a basketball player though either.
Right. Yeah. So the very simple things I think about in basketball, you have to dribble a ball and you have to shoot a ball. Right.
Yeah.
Those are the first things. But once you get done dribbling a ball, you could practice that all the time, and you should, right? You should practice that. But what's the next thing? Right. Okay. So shooting form and shooting position and all those different things. Right. So what's the next thing? Okay. Well, maybe dribbling between my legs. Right. See what we're doing here? Like, it always goes back to shooting and dribbling. Basketball is all about shooting and dribbling. Right. You can add in all kinds of other things, but until you got shooting, dribbling, you're not a basketball player. Right.
Yeah.
So think about whatever activity, sport or activity or pursuit that you can imagine in your mind. And how do you build that to become what you want to be? I don't care if it's mountain biking or crafting, like there's skill involved. And that's where I like to do some of my best work is I take something so dramatic like sports psychology, right? And working with athletes and military members, which I love to do. And I enjoy taking that mentality and that approach and working with others, right? I recently started a podcast and a Facebook group and just a community. That's the initial start, dedicated to stepdads, because a stepdad is a very unique position that has significant limitations, right? Because you're the stepdad, you're not the dad, right? And there's so many different perspectives that people can come into, right? And experience everything. And there's a lot of things you're not in control of. I like taking the idea of psychological skills and how do I apply that to the life of a stepdad? Because I've been one for 16 years. And sometimes I did it really, really well. And sometimes I didn't do it so well. And like you said, I could just continue on in my life, but I really want to learn what happened and what I did wrong and what I could do better and then help other people. The approach I like to take is everyone performs, and let that sink in for just a second. So let's take you for a second. I could pick on you because you're the host,
scary.
right? So, okay.
Please do.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So you're a podcast host. Tell me other roles that you fill, significant roles that you fill. You're a podcast host.
Yeah. Well, I'm a husband, which I take very serious. I'm a dad of 5.
Okay. Your dad.
I am a business owner.
Okay. You're a business owner.
I am a partner in a business.
Okay.
I'm an investor.
Okay.
You want me to keep going?
Well, we could, right? But I think you kind of get the
coach.
point.
Yeah.
Right. You get the point is all the different roles you filled. And then not only all the roles you filled, but all the activities, right? So let's break this down. Okay. So you have work, you have fitness, you have nutrition, you have relationships. You could break relationships down into you're a parent and you're in a relationship with a significant other. You're responsible for finances. You're responsible for nutrition. You're responsible for your fitness. Every single area of your life can be broken down and can be addressed as a performance issue. Because if you think about
it sounds to me like you were just explaining connect your dots.
Okay.
Hey, thanks for the plug.
Right? Yeah. So because think about a top tier athlete. Everything in a top tier athlete's life is a performance issue, because you can't possibly be having relationship or financial or nutrition or exercise issues off the field and then come onto the field and perform optimally. It's not possible. If you want to perform at your best, everything is a performance issue, right?
Yeah.
If I'm having a tough time at work, like a consistently tough time at work, eventually I'm going to bring that home and it's going to affect my home life. You can't live that segregated and still be happy, right? And still perform optimally. And happiness, let me clarify, happiness is not my goal. Like you're ultimately responsible for your own happiness. My goal is to help you perform better. And to utilize the skills better. And generally speaking, when people can utilize the skills better, they start focusing on what they can control. And that's when people really find purpose and meaning in life, is they're focusing on what they can control, and they can focus their energy on the most important things.
So this is really good, Neil. Thank you for that. And I've got a few questions and a comment here. So you and I are very similar in our approach, in that as a high performance coach, I really work with my customers on how are they performing, right? And how do we do these things better? And we go through, the 5 Ps, your physiology, your psychology, your presence, your persuasion, and all those things. But we focus on the action. We focus on the habit, because it's only through habits that we actually change our behavior, and therefore we change outcomes. Let me ask you this question. So yesterday, I think it was yesterday, a few days ago, I was speaking with somebody who's going to be a guest in the future on the show. And we were talking a lot about mindset. I mean, her thing was her mindset. She said she believed, she was worthless. She was hopeless. She was unlovable. And I said, well, what did you do about that? And for her approach on mindset was a lot of repetition of her affirmations. It was repetition of, scripture, things like that. Where do you begin? I mean, you've addressed the mindset piece, and we could call it the neuroplasticity of the shortcuts that our brain makes. We could call it mindset. We can call it stupid thinking, negative thinking, believing the lies. But it really just comes down to, we have such a negative outlook of our own person and our own opportunities or circumstances. Where do you begin? I know you said, now what, right? Okay, so that happened to you. Now what are you going to do? But where do you practically, for people that are listening, that are going, hey, I struggle with this, what's that first step? What do you walk people through?
I like to start, the easiest place to start is gratitude every time. It is the simplest skill, mental skill. So I'm going to give you 2. One is gratitude, and one is breathing. All right. Mm-hmm. They're both extremely simple, and they have, individually or together, have the most dramatic, immediate effect. Okay. And I'm going to give you the short explanation, and we can talk.
Can I ask you to pause that for 1 second? Don't forget your explanation. I just want to illustrate something here for my audience. What I really appreciate, you have a military background. You work with professional athletes, people in the military, obviously. And then when I talk to, I'll bring my friend Jason on, who, he's been on with me before, but he'll be on again. But he comes from more of a spiritual side. He was a pastor. He's a very strong but soft-spoken person. But my point is this: almost every person I talk to in personal development and creating better habits and growing your life, overcoming mindsets, any area like that, it just seems to me it always comes down to 2 things: gratitude and breathing as a starting point. So, I just want to affirm you with that, but I want to make sure for the audience and listening to that, and for me, and maybe this is just me, but there's times in my journey under stress where I've heard somebody say, be grateful. And I'm like, yeah, I'm grateful. I've kind of, yeah it and moved on. But it wasn't until I really started focusing on being grateful for all the things, the little things, the big things, the good things, the hard things, and taking time, as I say, go slow to move fast, which means in between activities and tasks, instead of just running from one thing to the next, take that time and just go, okay, let me just release what I did. Let me breathe in and prepare for what I'm about to do. That's when my life really started to change. And I think there's such a
there's kind of a cheesiness to it, but there's so much strength to it. And I just wanted to set that up, right? I just wanted to set that up now and let you explain that, because you said gratitude and breathing are like the foundation first step. So take it away and say it so much more elaborate than I just.
And I gotta laugh because let's add a little bit of humor in this, because sometimes just smiling, that's a trick I'll do sometimes in my workshops is, especially when people are tired, I'll just tell people, stand up, everybody smile, and just giggle a little bit for at least 10 seconds. Smile, and even if it's a forced smile and it's the forced laugh, do it for at least 10 seconds. And you're right. It sounds so mystical and flowery, but it works. Yeah. Oh my gosh, it works. And people want these grand explanations, but it's the simplest stuff that, again, going back to the basketball analogy, I can't teach you the incredible deliberate, dribble through the legs and pass behind the head and all this stuff. Like, no, we're gonna just dribble a ball for a half hour. So let's dribble a basketball. We're talking about gratitude and breathing. Right? So we got a mind-based skill and we got a body-based skill. So gratitude, and you kind of address this. Gratitude is not just being thankful. It's not. And I want to change your perspective by saying gratitude is a skill. Okay? It is a skill, and you have to practice it in order to get the most value from it. So gratitude goes beyond the idea of being thankful, and it bleeds into appreciation. To really appreciate. Now think about, what does it really take to appreciate something, right? That just sounds so much deeper, okay? But the idea behind it is a regular gratitude practice will help focus your attention. And I'm going to go back to let me make this even more basic. I talked earlier about the survival mechanisms, right? The human brain has a negativity bias. It's a protective feature, right? Because the caveman comes out of the prehistoric caveman comes out of the cave. What's the first thing he's looking for? The saber-toothed tiger that wants to eat him, right? Or you're walking through the forest and you see a stick. Was it a stick or a rattlesnake, right? Your ancestors were looking for danger. And I know they were, because you're here, right? Because it's a successful defensive mechanism. It's a protective mechanism. But here in our contemporary society, most of us don't face a lot of danger, right? Except for looking left and right so I don't get hit by a car. What danger do I really face? My car is, even if I get into an accident, my car is very, very safe. But if we can't find danger, our brain is still searching, and it's going to find gossip, negativity.
So is this why when my the label on the back of my shirt starts kind of scratching my back, that I feel like there's a bug on me?
Worst case scenario.
I start freaking out and smacking it, thinking it's a bug, and it ends up just being the label of my shirt.
Yeah, your brain goes to the worst case scenario. It's a defense mechanism, right? Yeah. So, and it's not that we should ignore negative things. It's not that we should ignore dangerous things. You are absolutely responsible for still look out for those things. Mm-hmm. What you don't want to do is let those things control you. Right?
So how do we do that? That makes sense.
Yes. So the trick is, and it's a skill, right? You will find what you're looking for, right? And I'm not talking about your keys. I'm talking about when you scan your environment, you will find what you're looking for. So if you go out your door expecting to find negativity or having negativity on the mind, you will find it. If you drive throughout the day and look for positive things, you're going to find good, positive things. So here's what you do. When you, and if you're sitting at your desk right now, or you're sitting in your car, what I want you to do is, if you're at your desk, I want you to write it. If you're in your car, don't write it. Don't do dangerous things. Right? So I want you to think of 3 good things from the last 24 hours. And it has to be recent, 24 hours. 3 good things. And I'm not going to quantify it. It could be little, it could be huge. 3 good things from the last 24 hours. And then what I want you to do is, I want you to ask yourself 4 questions for each of them. So think of one of those good things. And I want you to ask yourself 4 questions. Why this good thing happened, what this good thing means to you, what ways did you or others contribute to this good thing, And what can you do tomorrow to enable more of this good thing?
Wow.
And by asking yourself those questions, you're reprogramming that automatic response in your brain, the habits that we talked about. You were creating new habit. But remember, if you start hitting adversity or stress or trauma, you're going to jump back to old habits. So what we want to do is we want to reprogram so that your old habits are now the good productive habits. So what I want you to do is a 30-day gratitude challenge. Every single day, I want you to, whatever time is most convenient for you, I want you to set this up. I want you to set yourself up for success. I used to do this first thing when I would get to my desk at work. I would take a little sticky note, right? Sticky note. I can't write a journal. I'm not journaling here. I'm just writing 3 short things just so that it's meaningful to me. And then I sit there for 5 minutes and I just reflect on each of those three things, right? 5 minutes total, not 5 minutes each. It's a short skill, right? I'm just trying to create instant feelings of gratitude and appreciation for good things that have recently happened to me. Now, the trick here is, we talk about neuroplasticity. I can say it, I promise. Is we're reprogramming these things. So what they found is not only do you have a tendency to look for those good things and it counteracts the negativity bias, but you get better sleep. You have a better attitude. You have better relationships because, people bring positivity. Other people want to be around them. Yep. But rather than having to sit at your desk and reflect on 3 good things, you're going to find that you're going to end up scanning your environment throughout your day, and you're going to start picking those good things out. Mm-hmm. And it's not that you're not going to see the negative or you're not going to see the bad, because you're still responsible for looking left and right so you don't get hit by a car, but you're looking throughout your day. You're training your brain, and your brain is eventually going to have that perspective of, hey, where's that good thing that I'm supposed to be writing about tomorrow morning, right?
Yeah,
so you're training
really
your brain, and you're going to have more of an appreciation for those good things. So when I come home from a bad day and my son comes running to me to give me a hug, I'm not going to yell at him as my first response because I had a bad day and I don't want anybody to talk to me. I just got to go, unload my stuff. No, I'm going to have more of an appreciation because yesterday I said, when I came home, my son came running and gave me a hug, and that was a really good thing. I need to make sure that I'm focusing on those things. And then, that pattern, right? We talk a lot about pattern interrupt. So I come home from work after a bad day, and my first response is to be grumpy and go stomp off. No, I'm going to take that breath, and we'll get to breath in a second. And I have some appreciation for now my son's running to me, and now suddenly I have appreciation for something that's great in my life, and I can leave all that nonsense behind me.
Yeah. I want to illustrate what you just said in a way that makes sense to my simple brain. Several years ago, I was in the market to buy a truck. I wanted a new truck, and I was trying to figure out, did I want the Ford F-150 or the GMC, whatever it was at the time? Tells you what I ended up buying. But what happened, I've noticed, is that when I decided, okay, I'm going to invest in a truck, and what happened is for the next several weeks and months, as I was thinking about it, everywhere I drove, I saw every truck on the road. Like, I didn't know there were so many trucks out there until it was top of my mind. And it's like my subconscious was just, I'm driving down the road going, there's a truck, behind
there's hundreds of types of vehicles on the road. Why are you suddenly seeing every single pickup? Because it's what you're focused on.
Right. And it wasn't just seeing the pickups there. It was like the one that was, hey, there's a pickup behind that big truck that's around the corner. Like, my subconscious was searching without me being aware and finding them for me and going, there's one, there's one, there's one. That's what you're saying, right?
Yeah. And that's a perfect example. Now take that into something that's more like you were just noticing what you happen to be focused on, right? Now let's take that into, something that's, productive, counterproductive, good, bad. That's a perfect example that you're going to find what you're looking for. So let's train the habit. So subconsciously, without thinking about it, you're going to be looking for good things rather than bad things.
Right.
Because we know if it's out there, if it's bad, we're going to find it.
Right.
That's what our brain wants to do.
So gratitude is the foundation of training our subconscious, training our minds to start looking for good things instead of bad things.
It is a foundational skill that I teach. Yes.
Excellent.
And when we get into even more, when I get into workshops or I get into training with individuals and we start getting into optimal performance, I will wrap back around to gratitude, because you, again, can't reach optimal performance. Everything's a performance issue when you're trying to be at the top of your game. And I'll wrap back in and I'll say, hey, remember that appreciation thing that we talked about 3 weeks ago? Are you practicing it? Because we're going to now roll it into, practice sucks, or, this happened, or, hey, I'm a pitcher out on the mound. And I mean, think about being a baseball pitcher. I've never been a baseball pitcher, but imagine that. Like, it's the fourth inning, first 3 innings, you did great. And then suddenly you gave up 3 walks and a run, and, you're 1 run away from losing the lead. And I mean, imagine being a baseball pitcher. The world is watching you, including the manager on the bench who has 5 other pitchers ready to go. Right. That's some pressure. And you've got about 5 seconds to get your mind right and get ready for the next pitch.
Wow. That's
the life of a pitcher.
Right.
That I imagine. I've never been a pitcher, but that's what I imagine. But that you can take that scenario into anything. So I'm like, all right, baseball pitcher, you're out on the mound, and what can you do that takes 5 seconds to get yourself recentered? He's like, well, I can take a deep breath, and I can talk about the high performance that I had in the first 3 innings, and it's not about what I'm doing wrong right now. It's what was I doing right before, and how can I recreate that? It's bringing that appreciation for the high performance he had before, takes a breath, has this mental image, appreciates his skill and his opportunity, and suddenly he's optimistic, and it doesn't always work, right? I'm trying to paint an optimal picture here, but these are the things that you have to practice. But if you don't practice them, you're not going to get them down in 10 seconds in the middle of a baseball game. It's not going to happen. But wrapping all those skills into one, you have to start with the basic stuff. And for the majority of us, hey, man, an optimistic perspective would really, really make my day today.
Yeah. I like your 4 questions that you ask in that situation. And I'm not sure if you've seen this, but I have what I call the WIN method, right? How do you win in everything that you do? And WIN, it stands for, what did I do well? You ask, what did I do well? And you write down, or you think through every single thing you did well. You just exhaust it all. And the reason I came up with this is because I watched my kids when they were younger. They would play a soccer game or something. They'd come off, and like my daughter, Kate, was really good, and she'd score 2 goals and have an assist, and she'd come off the field. And first thing that she is, did you see that pass I missed? Or did you see that shot that I missed that I should have scored? I'm like, yeah, I saw those, but I also saw the 2 goals you scored, and like the 15 great passes you made, and all the hustling you did. And as you say, our mind is designed to go after the negative. So the way I was working towards trying to help them retrain it was to say, hey, we're going to have the WIN method. We're going to win. What did I do well? Number 2 then would be, where could I improve? Because we got to look at that. And the N is one thing tangibly I'm going to do different next time. And it was from the same philosophy or mindset that you have of, we're going to find what we think about. So think about the one thing you'll do different next time. And my belief is, if you focus on that you're actually going to act or perform accordingly, and act differently, act better than you did before.
And it's funny because that WIN method is very similar to a performance cue, which is we talk a lot about pattern interrupt, which we've talked a lot about that today without actually saying that. Pattern interrupt. So, I'm having some negative consequences or negative events or counterproductive events. What can I do real quick to be like, okay, center my mind, what's important, right? So the WIN reminds me of one of my performance cues is what's important now. Right? If you want to win, you have to focus on what's important now. A pitcher can't worry about, man, am I going to make it to the 9th inning? It's only the 4th inning. You got to worry about getting out of the 4th inning first before you can worry about making it to the 9th inning, right? So what's important now? The most important thing is your very next pitch. Right? Don't worry about 2 pitches from now. Don't worry about the next batter that's, you're staring down in the batter's box, because if you can't strike this guy out, or you can't get this guy to fly out, they might pull you before you get to that guy. So what is important right now? Right now, you are only controlling the next pitch that you throw.
What's the next best decision you can make?
That's right. Yep. What is within your control? And I've got a booklet that we use. A very simple skill is there's a circle on a page. That's it. It's a blank. It's a blank page except for a circle. And I tell people, I want you to take 5 minutes or even 2 minutes, like whatever it takes. And I want you to write on the inside of that circle all the things that you're in control of, right? Immediately, like in the next 2 hours. What are you in control of? Right? I can sit down, I can stand up. What am I going to eat after this workshop? Like, the phone calls I'm going to make. Am I going to check my phone? Those kind of things, right? What's outside of my control, right? All the things that are outside of your control, because it's a very graphic explanation of what are you focusing on? And if you're so worried about all this other stuff that's outside the circle, you're going to continue to build up that anxiety and fear, right? People talk about anxiety and fear. If you're feeling anxiety and fear, and again, not a therapist, not talking clinical anxiety, I'm just talking about the natural response to stress, anxiety. If you're feeling anxiety and stress or anxiety and fear, you are focused on what you can't control.
Right.
Absolutely. Because anxiety and fear is usually associated with being nervous, right? But let me ask you this, and this was in a Simon Sinek talk, which is one of my all-time favorites. What's the difference between being nervous and being excited? The physical response to being nervous and excited is exactly the same thing.
Right.
Your heart's racing, your muscles are tense, you're jittery, your palms are sweaty, right? But a champion focuses on what they can control, and they channel that energy into optimal performance. People who have a tendency to, public speaking goes bad, and we've all seen it, right? Or they don't do as well as they hoped. If they've got that nervous energy and, oh, what if, and what if this happens, and what if that, and oh my gosh, what about this? And you're spinning yourself out of control because you're focused on things you can't control. A baseball pitcher, he's like, what if he hits a home run? Well, what if you throw the perfect pitch and he still hits a home run? That is out of your control. I have a friend of mine who used an example, and I can't remember the name of the pitcher, but this pitcher, after a game, when he would give his press conference, would always talk about, they were like, well, how did you feel your game went today? And he said, well, I had a 74 out of 100 or something like that, just throwing out some numbers. And they're like, what do you mean by that? And he's like, 74 of the pitches did exactly what I intended them to do. Right. So he's like, I need to focus on those, right? And continue to do those well. Because once the ball leaves my hand, it's out of my control.
Right.
I can't do anything about it. All I can do is what's within my control. And that's, the little things that you would imagine of a baseball pitcher. My footwork, how my fingers are on the ball, how I throw the ball. But once it leaves my fingers, I'm a participant, for the most part, most pitchers, but he would rate himself by what's within his control. Yeah. And I think that we need to do that. And there's a lot of grace that comes with that. And I don't mean like grace like a dancer, but like grace, like give yourself some grace, give yourself some forgiveness. Write down all the things that are outside of your control and stop holding yourself accountable for what's outside of your control. Yeah. You're killing yourself.
Stressing yourself out. Well, speaking of things that we can't control, you mentioned gratitude and breathing. Let's jump into breathing. This is a long episode today. I hope everybody is hanging with us and getting as much value out of this as I am. But let's jump into breathing. Talk to us about the value of breathing for our performance.
One of the ways that I like to start some of my talks is with those mental shortcuts that you can take. The idea is to bring as many default actions or processes to your conscious so you can become aware of them, you can learn to control them, and then you can be more deliberate, right? So it's the shift from default to deliberate. And think about all the processes and actions within your body or your behaviors that are default. We talked about tying shoes. I can do that without thinking, right? That's a default. But think about more internal, right? Your breathing, your blood pressure, your heart rate, your digestion. How much of that can you control? Okay, let's start with the most difficult. Can you control digestion? Not necessarily, but I can control what I put in my body to help my body digest better. What about breathing? Well, clearly, because we're going to spend some time talking about it, right? But talk about like heart rate and blood pressure. Can you control? Maybe not control, but you can have a significant effect. So think about all the default mechanisms that you have and how you can bring them to conscious, you can train them, and you can be more deliberate with them. Breathing is the easiest one. Most of us breathe really, really shallow. And without going into a lot of detail, there's your nervous system is broken into two sections, and we're going to keep this at a really basic level. There's the sympathetic and there's a parasympathetic. Para, think of parachute, right? Parasympathetic slows you down. That's your rest and recovery. Your sympathetic is your activate. It's your fight or flight. It's your pregame ritual that gets you ready to go for the game, right? Breathing has the ability to activate the one that you need, because a lot of times we talk about breath, if I can get that out, when we talk about breath, a lot of times people will say, well, take a breath and slow down. Well, what if I don't need to slow down? What if I need to speed up, right? So don't consider what you need to do until you consider what you're trying to achieve. So maybe my heart's racing and it would benefit me to slow my heart rate, relax my muscles, and get ready to speak, right? If my heart rate is 100 beats per minute and I'm talking too fast so that your audience can't follow me and they're lost, then that doesn't do me any good. So maybe my optimal speaking heart rate is about 80 beats per minute, and my speaking rate is at a certain cadence so that people can understand what I'm saying, right? That's what I want to achieve. So I need to understand what the result is that I'm looking for. So breath. When you breathe deep, you activate that parasympathetic nervous system, and it helps you slow down, right? And it helps you control something that you do every day. When you were born, nobody had to teach you, right? They didn't take you in a nursery and said, okay, this is how you breathe. Humans just breathe. It's a survival mechanism. We know how to do it. And we don't get it. It's very obvious. The problem is when you shallow breath, most people go through their day and they have this shallow breath. That's just their natural breathing style. But what they don't realize, that shallow breath actually activates your sympathetic nervous system. So without even realizing it, you're going throughout your day and you are causing your body to activate into a fight or flight response, right? We have a natural, that all going back to that survival mechanism, fight or flight, right? How many of us, sit in a natural curled position with our shoulders forward? I'm doing it on my desk. That's why I keep sitting back and taking breaths.
That's why I keep moving.
We drive like
my
that.
Chair.
we have our phones like that. We read books like that. That's a natural response. That's a defensive posture. And without realizing it, I'm telling my body to activate its sympathetic nervous system and have a stress response. And having a chronic long-term stress response, leads to chronic stress, and chronic stress is the precursor to all modern disease.
Right.
Stress, right? So how do you relieve stress? Put your hands back, open up your shoulders, lift your head, breathe deep.
There you go.
Do it. Unless you're driving, don't do that, right?
Yeah.
It feels amazing, right? But it's that deep breath that activates the parasympathetic nervous system, and the parasympathetic nervous system tells us to slow down,
right? That
everything's okay. There's a book out there, and I wish it just came to mind. I don't remember who the author is, but it's called "Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers" or "Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers" or something like that. And basically, it talks about this. It says they don't, because you look at animals in the wild, they respond when they need to, they run off, and when they don't sense the danger anymore, what do? They go back to eating grass, and they're relaxed, right? They only react to stress and adversity when it's necessary. But we as humans are constantly on guard. We're constantly on the go. We have this constant chronic stress response about go, 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 go. And that's why we don't get good sleep. We don't get good nutrition until you take active control of it. And the simplest thing you can do is just take a deep breath, because it activates your parasympathetic nervous system and it encourages you to slow down. You can think clear, your heart rate drops, your muscles aren't tense, right?
Plus oxygen,
so that's the power of breath.
Right. Plus oxygen just kills off a whole bunch of bad stuff that might be in your body.
Right. But it could also be a go thing, right? Because you think about, okay, well, what if I don't need to calm down? What if I need to get going? It's pregame. Okay, well, use that knowledge that short, shallow breaths activate your sympathetic nervous system, and do that. They call it a speed up breath.
Yeah, that's actually an exercise I do with some of my customers.
You take a really, really deep breath through your mouth. You close your mouth and you do really short in and out breaths through your nose.
Yep.
Don't do it for a long time because you might pass out, but like 5 to 10 seconds, and it actually gets you going, right?
Yep.
So maybe you don't need another cup of coffee. Maybe you don't need another Monster. Maybe you just need to do some focused breathing and some affirmation and gratitude skill.
I would say that you don't need coffee or the Monster at all, but that's another episode.
That's another conversation.
Yeah, that's another conversation.
And you can wrap these basic skills into a lot of different things, but if you start there, it's a good simple practice. And those are two things that you can do at any moment. At any moment in your day, you can think about a good thing and why it meant something to you. At any point in your day, you can take a deep breath and relax, right? And usually the best time to take that deep breath is when you are the most stressed or you're facing the most adversity, because to respond first without taking a moment. And I use this analogy, and then, I know we're getting short on time, but think about this. Do you know what the first thing is a first responder is taught when they arrive on a scene? What's the first thing they're supposed to do?
I don't know. What is it?
So and I don't know the whole thing, but it's essentially scene safe, right? They've got this acronym that they use. My fiance is a medic, and she'd hit me because I forgot. But so essentially scene safe, right? So you come upon a scene, firefighter comes upon a burning building. Scene safe. Is the scene safe? I have to assess to make sure I know what I'm doing, but I got to, the safety part of it, right? I don't want to just go rushing into a burning building. As heroic as that sounds, that's not what they do. So the first thing they're taught is to take a deep breath and assess the scene and assess yourself, right? So imagine that. A first responder comes upon the worst scene imaginable, and the first thing that they're taught is to take a second and take a breath. That's pretty powerful. So what are the rest of us experiencing that we can't just take a quick breath to assess ourselves, to get our heart rate under control, to allow our mind to think more clearly so that we can act or react more appropriately? Wow.
Neil, this has been a great conversation. I want to thank you so much for being a guest. And before we're done, I want to give you an opportunity. If people want to connect with you, they want to find you, where can they go to find you? And we'll put all this in the show notes as well.
Yeah, you bet. A lot of social medias, Facebook, Instagram, not as active on Twitter lately. So Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and a quick plug. If you are, or anybody who is a stepdad, I started a dedicated community for stepdads, and I'm really looking for people to jump in and join that conversation, the podcast and the Facebook group, and we'll grow it from there. And I did want to offer up one thing. So for your listeners, I want to offer up for 10 people. If you contact me, you can either go to my website and fill out the contact form, or you can email me direct, neil@neilwattier.com. The first 10 people that email me, in the subject line, subject connect the dots, I'm going to offer up a free...
Connect your dots.
Your dots.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's
connect
okay.
Connect your dots in the subject line. I will offer up a free conversation where we can just talk. Just like this, like what's the most important thing that you could take away that's going to have the biggest impact on you? No sales, just a conversation. 10 people, connect your dots in the subject line. Contact me either through my website or email me, neil@neilwattier.com. And I'd like to have a conversation just to see what we can do to help people, that might have a great impact in a short period of time.
You are very awesome, and that is very generous of you. So everybody, for listening, hey, it's the first 10 people. You send them an email, use the subject line, connect your dots. And it's Neil Wattier. It's Wattier, to make sure that you spell it correctly. As long as you spell it correctly, I don't think he'll care the way you pronounce it.
I don't care.
The emails get there. Now, tell me a little bit. I do want to get you connected with Susan Hallett, who's one of my friends, and she's got a masterclass called Blend It Together, working with blended families. But if somebody's out there, they want to send a stepdad, they are a stepdad, to your Facebook group, what's the name of the group? How can they find you?
The name of the podcast and the Facebook group is Champion Stepdad. I took that as the sports analogy of what can we do to apply performance skills to perform better in our role.
That's awesome. All right, Neil, thank you so much for being with us today and talking about resilience and talk about performance coaching, performance training. Very grateful to have you with us today. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I appreciate it. So everybody, this was a great episode. I will give a little summary here in just 1 second. Thanks for listening.